Welcome back to another episode of the McKinney Podcast, folks. We are celebrating what makes us unique by nature, and this is our first episode with a twofer, a double feature, if you will.
And not just any two.
But the two that the people have chosen.
That's right.
The people have literally chosen them because both of these gentlemen are kind enough to grace us with their presence, are elected by the good people of McKinney to serve on our city council.
That's right.
Yeah, and you were elected for at-large and then migrated into District 2, if I remember correctly?
Yes.
Yeah. And Justin, you're over there, District 1, which starts on the east side and wraps around to the northeast side a little bit.
It's a big district.
It is a big old district.
Yep.
No, man. So, guys, I totally forget I'm supposed to do this for our guest here. So, yeah. Please give a proper McKinney Podcast welcome to Mr. Patrick Cloutier and Mr. Justin Beller. Welcome to the show, fellas.
Thank you.
Now, this is quite a treat. Now, we should have made it a little bit more difficult on these guys by letting people know that we're recording with City Council today so they could tell us what questions they want us to ask. I wanted to be gentler and kinder for the first go-around, so when we have you guys back at some point in the future, we might allow some audience participation ahead of time and say, hey, throw some questions out there. But for this show, Fred and I are just going to be, tossing some softballs across the plate, asking some background questions, and really just, what do you love about McKinney? Why in the world are you spending your valuable time serving the people of McKinney on City Council and just celebrate what makes this such a great place to live and work and whatnot? So, Fred, you want to just jump right into some of these questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
So background. We'll start with, what is the human side of things for you guys, and B comes before C in the alphabet. So I'm going to let Justin go first.
And D1 comes before D2.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
I'm sick of that part.
I feel like there's a story there.
Obviously,
executive session is a little bit testy sometimes.
There's a little rivalry there.
There's some fights.
Okay.
There's some fights.
Justin, what's the backstory, man? How in the world did you find yourself to McKinney? What do you do when you're not serving on council? Family situation, work, whatever you want to share. We'd love the human side of Justin Beller.
Yeah, I grew up in Arkansas. Met my wife in college, and we got married in college. And she's from just north of Fort Worth and wanted to live in DFW, so we ended up in Collin County. And we've been in Collin County now for almost 20 years, and been in McKinney for about 14 years. And she's a school teacher at Lovejoy ISD, and I'm a banker at Shamrock Bank. And we've got two they're not young anymore, two daughters, 16 and 18, that are growing up and about to move out, and kind of fill up all my time.
About to be off the payroll, huh?
Yeah, well, not
no,
not for a little bit.
Patrick has a couple of daughters, so three daughters,
3, yes, sir,
and grandchildren.
Yes, he does. Oh, we'll get to that part. Now, what is your grandpa name?
Papa.
Papa.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
and
man.
Vonda, what do they call her?
Lala.
Papa and Lala.
Oh,
How
my
much
gosh.
fun.
If that's not the cutest thing ever, I don't know what is.
Mm-hmm.
What's the Patrick Cloutier story?
Patrick Cloutier's story is my father was in the infantry, and we moved around, and I never got to have a hometown. And I always hankered for a hometown. And the first house we bought was in Louisville, and I hated it the day I bought it, hated it the day I sold it. Bought it for $67,000, sold it for $77,000, and that was the catalyst to help us build our home in McKinney. We first came to McKinney in 1991 for a very rudimentary harvest fest on the square, and the square was vastly different back then than what it is now. And a goat ate my daughter's hair, and I thought, I'm home. So this is where we built our house. I always knew once we built it here in 96 that this is where I'm going to be. And in 98, I was sick of traveling to Addison for work, and my wife found a flyer on the square to get an office downtown over what was then Mama Amelia's and is now El Mejor. And so my professional life is I'm a financial advisor. My office has been in the same place now for 26 years, still in that building. Raised all the girls here, and all of my grandkids live here too. My two oldest daughters are both homeowners here in McKinney, one in District 4, one in District 3.
That's funny. Justin says, he's getting ready to have two off the payroll. Patrick, on the other hand,
is adding to the payroll.
has one on the payroll.
That's true. My middle daughter works for me. Madeline works for me. And anyone that knows Madeline knows that, nature versus nurture, she just works like a rented mule, and she just gets it done. And so she allows me the professional bandwidth to serve the city, which is the honor of my adult life, to be able to serve the city in the capacity that I do.
A quick little note there, Madeline Underwood is a distinguished member of Leadership McKinney Class of 2020, the best class ever, of course.
Well, what was your class?
2013.
And what was your class?
2012.
2012. And I'm without class.
You need to get a class, man.
I do. However, we are in Leadership McKinney royalty, because I have it on, you are the LM Alumni of the Year, right?
I was in 2020, and he was some years before me.
Yeah, sometime. I don't remember what.
But I was co-alumni of the year in 2020 with Jason Hernandez.
That's right.
Yeah. But Justin was probably, I'm going to say 2015, 2016, something like that.
Yeah.
Man, you want to talk about a great story. And Jason Hernandez is on our guest list. We're going to get him in here, get him to sit in one of these chairs, because, wow. What a great story that guy is. And I know that you call him a close friend, and you actually introduced me to him. He was the episode that the month, the meeting, the group of our year of leadership, when we got to go out to the jail and have the criminal justice conversation. Jason was a guest speaker that day for us and sharing his story, which I won't get into because I want it to be compelling and fresh when our audience hears that.
Yeah.
But
Yet another cliffhanger.
yeah,
Way to go, James. That's like 2 in a row.
I like to drop the nuggets to make sure that people pay close attention to
That's
future
right.
episodes. You can't give the people everything they want
right.
all in one. So, gosh, where do we start? There's so many different things I could ask these guys about. Let's keep it easy. Why McKinney? I mean, when you checked it out, when you're like, hey, maybe we live in McKinney, maybe we do things here. What was it about? And you've both been here for a long time, so I know there's a pretty lengthy answer here. What in the world is it about McKinney that caught your attention and still keeps your attention, that you choose to be here now? Because you guys are both successful businessmen. You can live just about wherever you want to live within reason. Maybe not, Monaco on a hillside somewhere, but most of the world is open to you for living locations.
But why would they move to Monaco when they're in McKinney?
I was just thinking of Formula One, and just tried to think of the most luxurious place in the world that I certainly can't afford to live there.
Well, listen, Formula One, we have 121.
Which is basically Formula One, right. Yeah. Or as I call the Dallas Toys, the North Dallas Speedway.
That's right.
So, anyways, back to
the question: why McKinney?
Why McKinney? Take it any way you want. Whoever wants to go first.
Yeah, I'll go. So I grew up in a very small town. I lived 7 or 8 miles outside of a town of 600 people. So
Wow,
just a very small community, and everybody was interconnected. And so, it has this small town feel, and, we relied on each other, and you knew everybody, and there was something to the community that was established in that. And when we moved down here, we lived in Plano for a little while, and you're in a large population base. We had a rear entry garage in our home, and the only people we knew maybe were from our work. We didn't know neighbors. We didn't know, there wasn't a lot of easy ways to get connected to the community. Mm-hmm. And so when we came to McKinney, I live in the older part of McKinney, just north of downtown. That was completely different for us. We knew our neighbors. It felt like a small town. It felt like my hometown, just because of the way that people treat each other here, the way you are kind of, you have opportunities to engage with the community, whether it is in kind of common space in an area like downtown, or if it's just walking through the neighborhood in an established community like downtown. I mean, it just fit for me. And so for me, that's what it is. It's about the community that we're able to build here, the community that we get. And, we're still able to live in a large city. It's still 215,000 people. And so, you get all the amenity of nice restaurants and good places to shop and good education, but it still has that component of a small town, that community feel for me, and that's what made it for me. So.
Yeah, for us, we needed a bigger house with 3 daughters. And, candidly, we were looking at Flower Mound as kind of a fill in the blank for being in Louisville. And we looked at McKinney because we just kind of loved it. And I was in a 1989 Oldsmobile Delta 88 with my wife by my side and 3 girls in the back, 30-something years old, stressed to the gills. And I exited El Dorado, drove west from 75, got into all those trees. My blood pressure went down. I said, y'all, I'm home. I said, I don't know what it's going to look like, but that's where we built our home, is just right around there. And I kind of knew from that moment that this was it for us, that this was going to be where we raised our girls. And we're on our second home. We moved a couple streets over 16 years ago to a little bit of a bigger house that we needed. But 2 years after we moved here, I moved my office here, and there's never been 3 minutes of discussion about moving anywhere else. This is it for both of us. So it's home, it's work, it's where we raised our girls, it's where our granddaughters live. And so there's an old saying, you can be involved or committed. It's like a ham and eggs breakfast. The chicken's involved, the pig is committed, right? So I always say I'm committed to McKinney.
There you go.
My whole family is.
All in. I love it.
I got to say, Justin, you can confirm this, being, with your backstory and everything. Patrick sure talks like somebody who was born and raised in small town in Arkansas. Like his one-liners, his quips, his comments. I'm like, man, you were born to be a grandpa. You got so many of those just boom right off the tongue one-liners. It sounds like something
constant. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love it. No, we discovered McKinney in 2015. We work in the insurance business and started in Dallas and then moved to Addison with the company. We were living down off of Frankfurt and Tollway back in the day, and was just disillusioned with all the things. It was so busy down there. It felt so generic and corporate. And we literally did our research and went city by city by city. It was like, what about this? I liked Collin County. I liked being further north. It just doesn't feel nearly as cramped as Dallas. Nothing against people who live in Dallas. I just don't like it. It's not my flavor. It's different. And then we found McKinney, and I'm like, ooh, well, there's a lot of pretty in McKinney. Lots of hills. There's actual topography. It's not just completely flat like every place else that we'd been to. And there's so many parks, and there's so many like local things. There's some chain stuff, but so much of McKinney is local to McKinney, or at least to Collin County. If you like multi-location stuff, like I keep going back to Dilla's Quesadillas place. They're not from McKinney, but they're from the area. And it was just like, oh wow, this feels very different than Plano, very different than Frisco. The running joke in our house was, I sleep in Plano, but I live in McKinney. And it was like that for a few years. It was like, oh, I cannot wait to get up here. And I'm kind of with you, Patrick. My wife and I bought a house finally in August of 22. We moved up here. I'm just like, all right, I'm here. I'm never leaving, dang it. We're here for good. So, Charlie started kindergarten at McClure Elementary out there off of Ridge and 380, and just like, all right, he's in the system now. He's locked in. The old, if you don't, wherever you are when the kids were in kindergarten, it's kind of hard to leave once they get in that flow and they start making friends and doing stuff. It's like, we better get settled before that kid starts kindergarten, because I know how my wife is, and wherever he is when he's in kindergarten, we gonna be there for a while.
Yeah.
So, man. Oh, Fred, any questions on your mind here before?
Yeah,
I jump
actually,
in?
you already, Justin, you already said that you're District 1, and so you're east of 75 and north up to about where?
So it kind of jumps the new painted tree area. So I go to basically Hardin and 380, and then jump the new painted tree area. And we recently redistricted my area to be that those neighborhoods north of Baylor. So like Lake Forest to the west of Lake Forest, and so Heatherwood and all those communities up there are part of District 1 now as well. So it is a very western oriented district at this point.
All right. And then Patrick, you're 2.
I'm 2.
And where is your area?
I'm the district that makes geographic sense, I think, if you really think about it. Because what I could basically tell people is if you go south of El Dorado, west of 75, east of Custer, north of 121, chances in you're in District 2. There is a very small slice of the pie right there around Orchid, south of El Dorado, that is District 3. But basically all of that is District 2. And I'm probably the smallest geographic district, but that's because I have the most dense district in terms of people.
Well, the entirety of Craig Ranch is in your district.
That's right.
And then,
Stonebridge Ranch,
Silverado.
You got a lot of that.
You're in
The south of
El
El
Dorado.
Dorado. Yeah.
Fred, you're in District 2.
I am in District 2.
Yeah.
That's right.
I'm in District 3 by like 2 streets.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. No, it's hi, Jure. Sorry, you got stuck with me by like this quarter of a mile.
That's right. Okay, so when it comes to District 1, all right, there's been a lot of expansion east of like downtown, the square, all that other stuff.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of growth there with like Tups and local yokel and all those things over there. And those are great for the grown-ups, let's say for the adults. What are the plans to put in things that will, because there are a lot of families that are there's that is like McKinney. What is there, are there plans, are there things that are in the works for drawing more family, younger children type things?
Yeah, so a lot of that, from a city perspective, there are plans to, redo a lot of old settlers. We've got one of our oldest recreation center, but also one of our larger recreation centers there, with the Gilda Garza Aquatic Center there in East McKinney. And so from the city perspective, you'll have, more park functionality. We'll always have the festivals and things that are downtown or maybe on the new plaza of the new McKinney City Hall. But we need to attract the market players into, into these neighborhoods. We need more grocery services in East McKinney or along Highway 5. Yep. We need more recreation areas for kids to do something and be engaged in a positive way. And so some of that will come with the population growth that's occurring along that corridor. It is a very popular place to move and live, and we've got new construction that's coming. Seems like every day there's a new apartment community that's going in right next to City Hall. There's a proposed one by the cotton mill, and so as those properties come online, as more density or more people move in, more families move in, you'll have more demand for the market to fill and kind of provide that the outlet for kids but it's hard from a city perspective because we're landlocked, and so you kind of have to do it at Old Settlers or I live just north of downtown. They're in a park within a mile of me, and that's hard for kids and finding ways to be productive in an afternoon or weekend or something. So.
Do you mind if I take a bite at that apple too a little bit?
Go.
Justin, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a couple other parks in East McKinney, and I define East McKinney as east of the tracks. We have Watley Park, which is not well known. It's up near Throckmorton and 380. That one is being redone, but it's taking a lot of time because of the engineering. There is an old unpermitted landfill is in Watley Park that basically in the 40s people would dump stuff up there, and we're having to do a lot of engineering work to make that right before we put the park in. We also have Justin, is the park named Cottonwood, the one down there that is east of Highway 5, just barely east of Highway 5, that's been redone. I think Fitzhugh Park has also been redone.
Fitzhugh was redone with new basketball courts. So
right.
The existing park facilities are top notch in East McKinney.
Right. So there are those things, but once you draw out a neighborhood and once you plant houses and people get there, it's next to impossible to say, oh, let's get a park in there, right? So that's why in the western part of the city where we have Painted Tree, where we have Stonebridge and we have Craig Ranch, these parks were thought about beforehand, right? And so you had parkland dedication, which is part of what developers have to do that. In the older part of our cities, when we were kind of Wild West before we had city code and city planning, it's just tougher to deal with now. So one of the things that makes McKinney very interesting for a problem solver, and I would put both me and Justin in that category as natural problem solvers, is we're a growing city, but we are also have parts of it that are a very mature city, and the challenges in those that those two different types of cities present are very different.
Well, when you look at the geographic makeup, the distribution of socioeconomic strata, and to your point, like the basic design of the city from a land perspective, I mean, the West versus East thing is a really interesting dichotomy. East was here decades and decades before anything was developed. West of pick a street, Hardin, Lake Forest, whatever. They present some very interesting challenges from a development perspective. We'll have Paul Grimes in here this afternoon to talk about it from staff perspective and all the things that the staff city of McKinney is doing to help move things along, and obviously collaboration. God, we've got a lineup today. Mike Kowski with EDC is coming in, that's right, and then Paul Grimes right after him this afternoon. We'll get some great perspective,
absolutely,
for sure. But when you guys, from a council perspective, when you think about how can we encourage positive momentum, obviously as elected officials, there's only so much that you're able to do because city charter and the realities of government and private market and public-private partnerships and all the things developers have to want to do something. How in the world can you guys be a force for good in these conversations, to going from we should do X to hey, we are now doing X, whether it's from planning and zoning or combination of CDC and EDC. Sorry, a lot of people don't know what those things are. I apologize. Community Development Corporation and Economic Development Corporation, for those of you listening that aren't familiar with the alphabet soup of acronyms. I apologize there. What can you guys do to help move things along? Once everyone says, you know what, I think there's pretty good consensus that X is a good idea, and that how does it happen?
You want to start with that?
I'll start with this one. What I think, and I'm a pretty conservative guy by nature, is I'm a little bit of a rule of law guy, and I like to say if we don't like the law, then let's change it, right? So it's a matter of respecting property rights and allowing these things to come. Where a lot of time council comes in is when someone enjoys a certain zoning, but they want to change that zoning. And what we have to be able to do is to weigh out, is that what's best for the city? Does this serve the city well? Is it accretive to the city? Is it going to add to the city? And those can be tough conversations. And nothing ever that I've ever seen has had unanimous consent as far as, yes, Patrick, this is the way to do it. So we're always dealing in shades of gray. And we've got to use our minds and stuff to be able to do that. And there's a number of things that we've approved. And I'm just going to pick on one of them that may not be on anyone's mind and just give you my thinking there. We have a BMW car dealership going on at the southwest corner of Wilmeth and 75. Yep. Now, a number of years ago, it was made so that car dealerships were harder to build on 75. But yet, here we are. We've got that, and I voted for it. Why? Because what I saw there was, after talking to a number of people in the real estate business and seeing the demand, we were never going to get office there, okay? We were never going to get Lowe's or Target there because they're already just to the south. What was likely to come there was something like Whataburger, Taco Bueno, or something like that, fast food that maybe that area would have wanted. What is the ad valorem value, the property tax value of fast food? What are the jobs that's associated with compared to what a BMW dealership? And so the BMW dealership became the best of the really likely things to go there. A lot of people would say, well, why couldn't you put a Legacy West type thing there? Well, we, the city, don't do anything. We have private capital come to us with their decisions on what's going to be profitable. And candidly, the best solution that was achievable for McKinney was that BMW dealership. And so those are kind of some of the things that we chew on. And you can see, well, there's shades of gray in that, Patrick. There's good and there's bad about the BMW dealership. But that's everything that we do is with shades of gray.
Well, and I think before Justin sounds off on that, there's so much chatter in social media world. There's so much noise of, frankly, people that don't really know much of anything sounding off with very strongly, sharply worded opinions and thinking that these things are, backroom deals, or that they're, oligarchs that are just waving their scepter and decreeing that things happen. Perfect example, the BMW dealership. In order for that to happen, there has to be someone that comes along and says, hey, we'd like to do this. And then people consider it. We look at planning, we look at zoning, we look at the overall, what is good for the people of McKinney. As you said, what's the ad valorem, tax base, positive growth of something like that compared to another apartment complex or another, low-rise mixed-use commercial center of some kind. That, there's quite a few of those in the 75 corridor, and, there's not really anything of note there. I think the point that I would love to make, just from the citizen's perspective, is every single one of these decisions is very carefully weighed out and considered and calculated, and every stakeholder that is, in the conversation gets to have their input. There's nothing that's happening with some giant hegemonic power structure or people that are unilaterally doing something and saying, oh, you know what? Let's build 24 donut shops. Or, pick
car wash.
Pick whatever it is that's the punching bag, whatever category people are complaining about these days, chiropractor's office or whatever. It's like, this stuff is mostly driven by real estate development, people that own and want to create, commercial opportunities. The city of McKinney, city staff and those that volunteer, like I'm on Board of Adjustments that serves as a kind of appeals board for people that don't like what planning and zoning told them. All of us on this side of the fence, including city council, don't make the decisions. We simply, are involved in allowing what needs to happen according to private business interest. Like somebody came to you guys and said, hey, I own the franchise rights to build a BMW dealership. We think we'd like to put it there. And you guys put a lot of time and effort into considering what the options are for that piece of dirt and what to approve from a planning and zoning perspective. And here we are. So it's so important to state that this is not a quick thing. This is not 2 or 3 people sitting in a room somewhere going, we shall have a BMW dealership. Like it's so much more involved in that.
Yeah, and I just want to jump on there real quick that, we talked about, the nail salons, the donut shops, the car wash, stuff like that. And we're not anti any of those things because, and we said it on, I think it was with Mayor Fuller that we were saying that, people like all 4 of us here, we had a choice, we had a decision, and we came to McKinney and said, I like what I see, and this is where I want to have my family. And, regardless of what business you want to expand or build, there's a place for it in McKinney. And, the fact that someone could say, I want to open a sandwich shop or, chiropractor or dental practice or whatever, there is a place. And, using the BMW dealership as an example there, I mean, just across the street is the Mercedes dealership, and all the others. And I think that actually speaks to the strength of the community that you could have, because not every town has, these higher end, more luxury brand type things. And I think that that's critical for our city. And we still need some of the smaller things. I've been in business here for over a decade, and we're still a company of 2, sometimes 2.5, when my 21-year-old son is involved. But, that's exactly what we need. And what we needed was right here in McKinney. Now, you brought up a point earlier about the planning of the parks and stuff like that. So does Irwin Park fall in your Yep. It does. And so, I don't live over there. All I know is that one day I opened up, one of those Facebook social groups, and there was a big old stink because apparently a little corner of Irwin Park got absorbed, developed by the Borg or something.
They tore down a bunch of trees, bulldozed a bunch of trees.
Yeah. So what exactly was that? So set the record straight on that, because a lot of people thought that the dark web, dark force ruling powers just came in and said, bulldozer and just snatched that up. What was that about?
Yeah, no, and Patrick may actually be able to talk more about this because he's on the parks, or he's the liaison for our parks board. But I mean, it's just for me, it was a matter of, you've got old infrastructure up there, which is just an old barbed wire fence, which was put in place to avoid an old creek ditch, and it didn't align perfectly with a property line. And so there are assumptions made on where that property line is, that it should align exactly with this fence, and that wasn't the case. And so they come in with surveys and, all this technology that says exactly where their property line was, and it was different than the assumptions that were made for decades by whether it is the city of McKinney or if it's the people who have volunteered endless hours out there building trails. But the assumption was always it was the fence line. And, at the end of the day, I think they tore down one tree that may have been on our
I
property.
think there's a few more than that. I went and walked that, and the reality is it's incumbent on the developer to do his homework completely before he sends a bulldozer out. And McKinney has one of the strongest tree ordinances, if not the strongest.
Yeah.
I think it's the strongest of the North Texas cities. We're very proud and jealous of our trees, and we want to maintain them. There are people who spent countless unpaid hours carving those trails. And so I expressed to city staff that I had no tolerance for what happened, and I wanted the developer to pay the tree fines that they needed to pay with, and not give them an inch. So I don't know, and you actually brought it up, and I'm really glad you did, because I'm going to check on that to see if that's been done. But I do know after that we went out to the developers and the landowners who owned in other parts of adjacent Irwin Park, and we cleared up those boundaries so that we're not carving trails on private land, and that private land has markers before they encroach on us. But I've got no tolerance for developers coming and bulldozing trees that don't belong to them. And if the developers do bulldoze trees, there's a tree ordinance that we have where they have to either replace them on their property or pay significant money into our tree mitigation fund where we can replant somewhere else. I know this isn't what you asked, but I'm just going to bring this up. McKinney Greens is in Justin's district, and that was a Jerry Jones-owned golf course that for whatever reason failed and is being reclaimed by nature. We went and planted hundreds of trees in there, we being the McKinney Parks Foundation, which is all volunteer, it's not city employees, using money, I think, from the tree mitigation fund in order to do that, to replant trees in McKinney.
Excellent.
Love that.
Are they crepe myrtles?
No.
We have a couple of crepe myrtles here and there, just a few.
Yeah, just a few.
Yes.
So this is kind of a make it whatever you will question. There's a million things that City Council could be talking about, could be thinking about, or doing something with. When you think about where McKinney is in 2024 and beyond, what are one or two issues, topics, concerns that are on your mind as the two of the 7 elected officials that are responsible for making some of these big decisions, long-term, large-scale decisions? Where's your head go on important issues or topics? Justin, you can go first.
Yeah, I can start that. I kind of made my way to council through the housing field. I was on the McKinney Housing Authority for a long time, and then I served a little stint on the McKinney Housing Finance Corporation. And so for me, it's housing, and we've fallen into some market conditions that have kind of the tail wagging the dog, so to speak, right now in our market offering and what we have. But I think for us, that's a long-term issue that we need to be paying attention to, and we are paying attention to. That we've got to remember we're building a housing stock in a community that's supposed to be flexible and evolve over decades and not necessarily match what the market demands today. And so that means, in my mind, that means a variety of housing, whether it is first-time homeowner housing or buy-ups or estate housing or rentals or whatever it is. And we need to figure out, how to do that, because right now the market comes in and says we want either high-end homes or we want rentals. And that's not a good long-term solution for us to have two housing solutions rather than a multitude that allows, an individual or a family to kind of follow their own life cycle here, whether it is expanding for, family growth or downsizing as their kids go to college and whatnot, or, into retirement and those different stages that we're all going to face. We've got to find housing opportunities for all those stages and all those income ranges. And so just trying to fill those holes so that we have a good, sustainable balance in housing that lasts us for a century and not necessarily meets the suburban growth that we're experiencing today and, whatever else is driving our costs and everything up right now.
So on that topic, with all of the renovation and upgrading and things that are happening on the east side, are the communities down there concerned that they are going to get squeezed out?
For sure. I mean, that's always a concern when you have a change that's happening in a market. We, as a city, we did a study called a historic preservation study, or a neighborhood preservation study, I should call it, because we did a historic study as well, but a neighborhood preservation study that tried to evaluate what are the tools that we need to try to retain some of the character and makeup of the community, so that there isn't displacement with the change that's occurring. And so we've been able to implement some of those tools, but market forces right now are strong. I mean, in the years that I've lived here, we've gone from where you could buy a lot in East McKinney for under $5,000 to now you couldn't find one on the market for less than $150,000. Right. And so just that makes for a pretty steep kind of burden to overcome, and maintaining affordability for young families. I mean, that's for me is one of the big things. Is we need this. We need young families that are coming into their high earning age, that are coming into raising kids here. We need that opportunity for kind of the next generation below us. And if we don't have housing solutions for them, they're going to go to the next community, and we're going to be stuck in a pretty bad ebb and flow of demographics if we don't balance that out in a better way.
Okay, and then Patrick, over in Custer, heading north, just past Silverado, was that Storybook Ranch? That used to be that used to be there.
Yeah,
and now what's being developed there now? Is it multifamily or is it?
It's multifamily.
It's multifamily.
Yeah.
In your area, and well, actually in all of McKinney, really, do you keep an eye on the ratio of single family homes versus multifamily dwellings?
Yeah, let me go back and answer that previous question if you can first about what my driver is. My big driver is there is one question I ask myself all the time, and it is, what would a great city do? Mm-hmm. What would a great city do? And Dan Sullivan said questions are infinitely more important than answers. And so I ask myself that question. Now, beyond that question, one of the basic tenets I have that I do believe I share with Justin to a very large extent, it's much better to have ownership that families have in the city than it is rental. I was a renter in Carrollton, Texas, back when I first got married in 1989. I didn't know who the city council was. I didn't care who the city council was. I didn't know the zoning laws. I didn't care because I was transient. I could leave, and I did, right? So, but once I became a homeowner in Louisville, I started to understand these things. And once I became a homeowner in McKinney and I was committed here, I really started to understand these things. So I want home ownership. Homes are basically three parts: land, parts, and labor, right? What's happened? What Justin said is the land has gone up significantly, and that's good for all of us that own homes here, right? We've seen our homes appreciate. But parts have gone up, labor has gone up, and so it is harder now. And then what you've got is there's a couple compounding things. You've got interest rates now that have gone up, and you've got, in McKinney, we are very proud of our parkland dedication, which goes into the price of building a home, which is a different topic. But I love the home ownership part. The problem is that the developers want to monetize, and that's very difficult for them to do with for sale single family. And so they come to us with the multifamily. Now, the tract you were talking about was already zoned multifamily. Council didn't have a hand in being able to do anything there. But what council did have a hand in, it was a council before I was on, was the elevation that they wanted. And it butts up to Stonebridge Ranch. And so what Stonebridge did is they kind of, my words, maybe if I'm misspeaking, forgive me, but kind of fought the elevation of the property there. And so what you wound up with is, I think, probably a worse product, which is these for rent detached places that I don't think are generally good for the city to have. But you see them popping up a lot in our ETJ where we don't have any hand in it, and you've got a few of them that are popping up in the city. So I don't like that. I don't think it's going to age well. I hope I'm wrong.
And I would tend to agree. As driving past it, even when they're being constructed, it's like, this looks kind of dumpy. You know, I hope they do a good job of finishing them out, you know, with fascia and front elevations and whatnot. That gives the people that live there, you know, pride in where they call home. Because I tend to share your thoughts that, you know, that type of development, it ages very quickly and doesn't typically age, you know, well. So
no, I don't think it does. And really, the fact of the matter is as a business person, how much pride should a renter have in their home? I would argue not a lot necessarily. They want it to be functional, and if not, they're not going to invest in it. They're going to leave, right? And so I don't think it's going to age well. I don't think that's what a great city does. But I want to bring up a point that goes with that. What happened is that the residents fought the elevated multifamily. Sometimes when residents fight something, they wind up with a worse outcome. And I'm going to give you an example. Sprouts wanted to go at the northeast corner of Hardin and Virginia years ago. The residents had pitchforks out. They fought it. Sprouts wound up at Custer in Virginia. What did they get at Hardin in Virginia?
Walmart Neighborhood Market.
They got Walmart Neighborhood Market. They got a worse outcome than what they were fighting. And so a lot of times, and we on council sometimes will warn them on things that when they're fighting, hey, understand that you could get a worse outcome than this. And a lot of times we're not believed. And that just comes with the territory, comes with the seat. But it is reality. And we've seen that reality a number of times. I want to share one story about where we did have a good outcome. And that was that Callaway's wanted to come and be just to the east of Valley Creek Elementary on El Dorado. We lost our minds. Our girls were going to Valley Creek at the time. Everyone lost their minds. But what we quickly did is there were some leaders in our community that were sober, and they approached Callaway's and they said, what can we do? Callaway said, we spent $300,000 on this lot. If you buy it for $300,000, we will move up the road. We did. I put $500 in that I didn't have. And there's pavers around there because what we did is we bought that land for $300,000. We immediately donated it to Conmera Conservancy. Nothing will ever be built there. And there's pavers on the north side of that dedicate to the families that put the money in.
How about that?
So that's what we actually did. And that's actually the prescription. I share that story frequently with residents who don't want something near them that can be there by zoning. This is the prescription to do it. The city is not going to swoop in and buy it and put up a random park at the corner of Hardin and Virginia because we already have Bonnie Wink right there.
That's right. That's right. And great expansion there, Bonnie Wink, by the way. Some good stuff over the last couple of years.
Yes, sir.
So, like, over the last, I mean, you've lived here since 20 plus years.
Not that long, but yeah.
And you
I moved here in 96.
That's our last question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Justin moved in 2010.
Okay. So you have seen the growth, the density, all those other things. Where does it stop? Do we continue where we are until we're completely built out? And, you know, are we... I'm losing my question here.
I think I got it. Let me try it. Landowners have a zoning that they currently enjoy. If they don't want to build what the zoning they currently enjoy is, they can petition P&Z and council for a change of zoning. If they do want to build what they're currently zoned for, we don't get a bite at that apple. They just get to build it to our regulations. So But ultimately, there's going to be a density question that McKinney and future councils and future residents are going to have to answer. How dense of a city do we want to be? How many of these smaller lots are we willing to have? I don't have an answer to that, but I do believe that we will easily get to be a city of 350,000 during my lifetime.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you look at the map and you see where, and the ETJ, the Swiss cheese that's north of 380, over time, I just assume most of that is going to be incorporated as the years pass. You look at the map and it's pretty much unavoidable as things continue to naturally expand. When we first moved here, it felt like 380 was Oklahoma.
That's right.
And now, if you look at the geography, 380 is the belt. It is the midsection of our city 20 years from now.
Well, and I'll add this. I mean, we don't need to get into this for sure because it's a load of complexity. But there's a lot of controls that the city doesn't have
That's right.
in the ETJ because the state changed a lot of the annexation rules. Yeah, and so that Swiss cheese may still end up getting developed, and people may feel like they still live in McKinney because that's what their address says when they get mail, but they may not be living within the city limits of McKinney. Yeah. And so we may end up, Patrick said, about 350, which is lower than previous estimates, but that may be because there are a ton of residents around us who are not part of the city and have not undergone the planning and structure that we would want them to, so that we have a more, contiguous and cohesive city. So
well, and just for clarity's sake, as we do our lightning round and wrap this thing up, ETJ is short for extraterritorial jurisdiction. For those of you in our listening audience that aren't familiar, I apologize. I try to, state what the acronyms are early on in the episode. I failed there. That's my bad. But that's basically the parts of adjacent, regions of the city that are not technically within the city limits of City of McKinney.
But ultimately, if they do join a city, they're going to join McKinney. They don't have the bandwidth to join Melissa unless we release them from the ETJ or they petition for release. Yeah,
and they enjoy some benefits of being in a city, but they don't pay city taxes, for instance. They have it's a weird gray area. And I don't pretend to be an expert on ETJ. I'm not an attorney or a civil engineer or anything like that. Just suffice it to say that when the state legislation decided to pass Senate Bill 6 a few years ago, they created some gigantic headaches for city governance.
That's right.
That's right.
Good job, Austin. Way to go, guys. So we don't pull punches on this podcast.
That's right.
Now, when we will say it like we see it, politely, of course.
That's right.
Lightning round, and then get these guys out the door.
All right, lightning round for both of you. Who should be the first act at the new concert venue in McKinney? Journey or Taylor Swift?
I've got teenage daughters who will scream Taylor Swift all day long. So
I don't know that the economies of that venue work for Taylor Swift, but I would say Taylor Swift as well.
She's looking more at AT&T Stadium, which I hear is just a tad bit larger than the Sunset Amphitheater.
Yeah, but you have to drive somewhere. It's not in McKinney.
Dream wild, Fred. Dream wild.
Either one of those would sell out, though, huge, obviously.
That's right.
Thank you for not taking the bait and saying Mei Lee and the mayor. Because that was when George was sitting here, he's like, I'm going to try to make sure that happens. And I was like, George, I have no doubt that you will make sure that happens.
That's right.
Now,
all right, James.
No, is that it? That's your only one?
Yeah, that's the one.
All right. Now we told Lisa that she was the longest running episode, and now we have a new longest running episode.
We have double.
But there's two of them,
That's right.
So it all makes sense.
That's right.
All right, guys. I have just one question left for you. We asked this question of everybody. Who would win in a fight between a giant polar bear and a great white shark in a pool of infinite size? There's no edges to the pool, but the pool is only 6 feet deep. Mr. Beller, you go first. Are you team polar bear or are you team shark?
That's a good question. 6 feet deep, I would have to say, I'd still say team shark. Can get away, can get out of the hands of the polar bear, can get away, can attack.
Yeah. Hold on a second. We got, what is it here right there? We got one for team shark.
All right.
There you go. Patrick, what say you?
Team polar bear.
Yeah.
Shark can only attack with its mouth and teeth. Polar bear has 4 paws and the mouth and teeth.
More weapons, more
look at
flexibility.
this. That's never been brought up before.
We need to have a scoreboard
But we do.
on somewhere. We need to have it Team Shark, Team Polar Bear.
That's right.
So because I believe Team Polar Bear is winning 4-2 right now.
That seems about right.
Yeah.
That seems about right.
4-2. All right, Team Polar Bear has another one on the board. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you guys? I know accessibility and open communication with constituents, with the good people of McKinney. Anyone listening to this podcast has an open invitation. I know these two gentlemen aren't at-large council members, and there's 2 other districts as well. If you don't see yourself in the district, District 1 or District 2, then I know I speak for for Charlie and Rick and Jure, the other folks that are, and Michael Jones. Michael Jones as well, and of course George being George. I know I speak for our friends and colleagues, the other folks that are volunteering their valuable time on council. They want to hear from you, the listener of this podcast, the people of McKinney. You have a say in this. And other than, maybe your HOA board or something, if there's something going on in your life that impacts your daily living, your council representative is probably a great first call when you need advice or you need solutions. If it's not a, criminal justice nature or something's not on fire, thank you, McKinney Fire, McKinney Police. If it's not one of those two things, chances are your council representative probably knows the right person to be talking to. So, guys, I'd love to hear from you. What's your preferred way to communicate with the constituents?
For me, email's great. Our emails are online at the city's website. They're pretty easy we're pretty easy to get a hold of that way, but I try to be available through phone call or Facebook or any other way. So, and
it's District 1 at McKinneyTX.org?
Yeah.
Or is it McKinneyTexas.org?
It's McKinneyTexas.org spelled out, or it's J. Beller at McKinneyTexas.org.
Okay.
Both end up getting to me.
Cool.
So.
For me, I much prefer on email. My day job requires me to partition the email from my day job to my night job. So pcloutier at McKinneyTexas.org or District 2 at McKinneyTexas.org. And I invite anyone who wants to email me. I'm happy to grind with anybody regardless of what district they live in and connect them to whatever person. But it's also important to know that when a resident from McKinney has a problem, they can go to McKinneyTexas.org, and under residents, there is a thing called Report a Problem. And they could do anything from a missed trash pickup to a loose wire hanging out to a curb broken, and they can report problems on there. And our city staff is very good about getting on those things. So I'm not trying to dissuade anyone from contacting me. Also, Justin and I both try to meet with constituents on the Mondays prior to city council at the respective libraries. He's got some challenges with Roy and Helen Hunt Hall Library that I'll let him go over, but my Facebook page for City Council is Patrick Cloutier, District 2. And on the Friday before City Council, I will post whether I will be at John and Judy Gay from 5 to 7 p.m. in the front conference room on the Monday preceding the Tuesday council meeting. I try to get there every Monday that I can. I'm in relatively low demand, so chances are you'll catch me without having too many people in the room.
Cool.
Excellent.
Yeah. Patrick and I both did that kind of as office hours, so to speak, just to be consistently in one place so that it wasn't a burden to reach us. And the library this year went and changed the operating hours for the Hall Library. And so they close at 6 now, which makes it hard for me to find a location. So I have not overcome that yet, but we'll continue to do that in the future. So,
excellent. Guys, I know I speak for Fred and Allison and Elizabeth when I say thank you for giving some of your valuable time here. We didn't play any music beds this episode because
it was like with Scott Elliott. There was just so much good information. There was no time for it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of really important stuff being discussed. How do things happen in my city? How does that thing become that thing? Whatever it happens to be. Like these two guys and the other 5 people that they serve with on council, including George, the mayor. Like, we owe a lot of gratitude.
Amen.
Because you guys are giving selflessly, and as anyone will tell you who's served on council, Scott Elliott certainly did. This is not a personal gain kind of thing.
No,
you end up giving so much more than you receive. So I just, on behalf of the citizens, and speaking as a citizen of the city of McKinney, thank you for your service. And I know that our city is better off because of the two of you gentlemen. So I feel like that's a great place to end this episode. And let's get you back to your day, folks.
Yeah.
We'll catch you next week. This is the McKinney Podcast. Y'all take care.